The conference room felt smaller than usual with 15 pairs of eyes staring at me. I stood at the head of the table where I'd presented dozens of quarterly reports, but today I wasn't here to present. I was here to be executed. Martin Keene, my boss, sat at the opposite end with his arms crossed and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The VP of HR flanked him on one side, the company's legal counsel on the other. Clara Whitfield, Martin began, his voice carrying that false regret he'd perfected over the years. We've called this meeting because of serious allegations you've made against company leadership. Specifically, allegations of defamation regarding my educational credentials. My stomach dropped. I'd only mentioned it to one person in confidence, questioning whether his graduate degree from Ashford International University was legitimate. Apparently, that one person had gone straight to Martin. These accusations are not only false but damaging to company morale and my professional reputation, Martin continued, standing now for dramatic effect. We take integrity very seriously here. Which is why, effective immediately, your employment is terminated for misconduct. The room stayed silent. Nobody defended me. Nobody even looked at me. Security appeared at the door before I could respond. Wait, I managed to say, my voice shaking. He's lying. I can prove it. Martin's smile widened. Escort Ms. Whitfield from the building. Now. As the security guard touched my elbow, I spotted something on the conference table. A manila envelope, partially obscured by someone's laptop. The corner peeked out, and I could just make out the words printed on it. Confidential, verification request. The walk through the office to collect my things was the longest of my life. Co-workers I'd worked beside for a decade suddenly found their computer screens fascinating. Nobody made eye contact. Nobody said goodbye. My closest friend, Amanda from accounting, actually turned away when I passed her desk, pretending to be on a phone call. I could see her screen. It was blank. Martin watched from the second-floor balcony like a king surveying his kingdom, arms crossed, that same cold smile on his face. He wanted me to see him. Wanted me to know he'd won. The security guard stood silently while I packed my desk into a cardboard box. 10 years of my life. Photos, awards, the coffee mug my team had given me. All crammed into recycled cardboard. Nobody came to say goodbye. Nobody offered sympathy. Power doesn't need to yell to humiliate you, I realized. Just watches you fall. The guard escorted me through the lobby. The receptionist who'd greeted me cheerfully every morning for years looked down at her desk. The cleaning staff, people I'd always smiled at and thanked, pretended not to see me. In the parking lot, the guard finally spoke. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Then he turned and walked back inside. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before I remembered the envelope. The one on the conference table. I'd managed to grab it during the confusion of being escorted out, sliding it into my box when nobody was looking. With shaking hands I opened it. Inside were copies of Martin's supposed graduate transcript and HR's internal background check form. The form was unsigned. And there was a date discrepancy in the transcript that made my pulse quicken. The transcript claimed Martin had graduated from Ashford International University in May 2015. But the signature line at the bottom showed a registrar whose tenure, according to a quick Google search, had ended in 2013. I sat in my car, my fired-from-work box beside me, and stared at the documents. My hands had stopped shaking. Now they were steady, turning pages, comparing dates, noting inconsistencies. The HR background check form had a box for educational verification that should have been checked and initialed. It was blank. Someone had either forgotten to verify his degree or worse, deliberately left it blank. My curiosity shifted from wounded disbelief to something harder, more focused. If Martin had lied about his credentials, if he'd built his entire career on a foundation of fraud, then everything he'd done to me was built on that same lie. I pulled out my phone and searched for Ashford International University's alumni database. Their website looked legitimate, professional, with photos of smiling graduates and impressive placement statistics. I clicked on the alumni search function and typed in Martin Keene's name. Graduation year. 2015. Degree: Master of Business Administration. The search loaded, then returned 0 results. I tried different variations. Martin R. Keen. Different graduation years. Nothing. According to the university's own database, Martin Keen had never attended, let alone graduated from Ashford International University. I sat back in my seat, staring at my phone screen, feeling something shift inside me. Martin hadn't just fired me for questioning his credentials. He'd fired me to hide the fact that his credentials were fake. My name is Clara Whitfield. I'm 34 years old, and until this morning I was the operations manager at Brightwell Solutions, a mid-sized tech consulting firm in Seattle. I'd worked there for 10 years, starting as a junior analyst fresh out of college and working my way up through pure dedication and competence. I'd never been written up. Never had a negative performance review. I'd kept the company running through 2 major layoffs, a system migration that should have been a disaster, and countless leadership changes. I thought loyalty meant something. I thought doing good work and staying quiet when I should have spoken up would protect me. I was wrong. Loyalty doesn't protect you. It just paints a target on your back for people who know you won't fight back. That evening, sitting in my apartment with my box of office belongings on the kitchen table, I started applying for jobs. I had savings for maybe 3 months. I needed to move fast. Then my phone buzzed with an email from a recruiter I'd worked with years ago. "Hi Clara, I saw you're on the market. Unfortunately, I have to inform you that Brightwell Solutions has flagged your file as terminated for misconduct. I'm not able to represent you at this time. Best of luck." I stared at the email, reading it 3 times before the implications sank in. Martin hadn't just fired me. He'd poisoned my entire career. Any company that called Brightwell for references would hear that I was fired for misconduct. I'd be unemployable. 10 years of excellent work, erased by one lie from a man with a fake degree. Over the next week, I applied to 37 positions. I got 3 responses, all rejections citing concerns about my employment history. Doors that should have been opened slammed shut in my face. Recruiters who'd courted me months ago suddenly stopped returning calls. I was being blacklisted systematically and thoroughly. Martin had made sure of it. My former colleagues wouldn't even connect with me on LinkedIn. Amanda, my supposed best friend at work, had unfriended me on all social media. I'd been erased from their professional lives as completely as Martin had erased me from the company. I was sitting at my laptop, staring at another rejection email, when a message popped up on LinkedIn from someone I didn't recognize. The profile had no photo, just initials. "Katie, you didn't hear this from me," the message read, "but you should know that Martin paid someone to alter his records. I worked in HR when he was hired. I tried to flag the discrepancy in his verification forms, but I was told to let it go. I'm sorry about what happened to you. You deserved better." My hand started shaking again, but this time from anger, not fear. I typed back quickly. "Who are you? Can we talk?" The response came immediately. "I can't identify myself. I still work there. But you should know, you're not the first person he's done this to. And if you dig deep enough, you'll find proof. Good luck." The profile went offline before I could respond. I sat back processing this information. Martin had a pattern. He'd done this before. And someone inside the company knew about it. That's when I remembered my backup drive. I'd always been the type to keep backups. Call it paranoia or professionalism, but I'd maintained personal copies of important work documents on an external hard drive at home, just in case. I pulled it out of my desk drawer now, hands moving fast, connecting it to my laptop. The files loaded slowly, organized by year and project. I scrolled through folders until I found what I was looking for. HR Onboarding Archive, 2019. Martin had joined the company 5 years ago as a senior director. I'd been part of the hiring process, reviewing candidates' materials as part of the operational assessment team. I remembered being impressed by his resume. Harvard undergraduate. Ashford International for his MBA. 10 years of progressive leadership experience. The file opened, I scrolled through scanned documents. His application, his cover letter, and there it was. His resume with attached transcripts. I zoomed in on the Ashford International transcript. The university seal looked professional. The grades were impressive. The formatting was clean. But something was off. I opened a new browser tab and searched for official Ashford International transcripts. Found a sample on their website for verification purposes. Compared them side by side. The font was different. The seal was positioned wrong. The paper texture, even in the scan, looked off. Martin's transcript was a forgery. And I had the proof sitting on my personal hard drive, saved from 5 years ago. I sat back, my heart pounding. This wasn't just my word against his anymore. This was documentation. Evidence. Truth. I took a deep breath and picked up my phone. Time to verify this through official channels. The registrar's office at Ashford International University answered on the third ring. A kind woman named Patricia listened to my explanation. "I'm trying to verify a graduate degree for a former colleague," I said, keeping my voice professional. "His name is Martin Keene. He claims to have graduated with an MBA in 2015. "One moment please," Patricia said. I heard typing, then silence. More typing. A longer silence. "I'm sorry, Ms. Whitfield, but I'm not finding any record of a Martin Keene in our system. Could you check other variations?" Martin R. Keene. Different years. More typing. "No, ma'am. We have no record of anyone by that name attending or graduating from Ashford International University at any time." The validation I'd been seeking washed over me, mixed with disbelief. "Can you provide that in writing? An official statement?" Patricia hesitated. "That's unusual, but given the circumstances you've described, yes. I can email you a formal verification letter stating that we have no record of this individual in our student database. May I have your email?" I gave it to her, thanked her profusely, and hung up. 10 minutes later the email arrived. Official Ashford International University letterhead. Patricia's signature and title. A clear, unambiguous statement. This letter confirms that Ashford International University has no record of Martin Keene in our student database. No individual by that name has attended, enrolled in, or graduated from any program at this institution. I printed 3 copies, my hand steady now. This wasn't revenge. This was truth. And truth, I was learning, had its own kind of power. I sat at my kitchen table with the printed statement in front of me, a pen in my hand, and a decision to make. Could let this go. Move on. Find a new job somehow and rebuild my career from scratch. Or I could fight back. Not for revenge, though I'd be lying if I said that wasn't part of it, but for truth. For the principle that people shouldn't be able to lie their way to the top and then destroy anyone who questioned them. I drafted a letter to Brightwell Solutions Board of Directors. It was careful, professional, fact-based. I explained my termination, attached the official statement from Ashford International University, and included copies of the forged transcript from Martin's hiring file. I didn't accuse or demand. I simply presented the facts and suggested they might want to conduct their own investigation. "This isn't revenge," I told myself out loud, signing the letter. "This is truth." I drove to the post office and sent it certified mail, requiring a signature. Then I sent a digital copy from an anonymous email account I'd created, just in case the physical letter got lost somewhere. It was done. The truth was out there now, in the hands of people who had the power to do something about it. All I could do was wait. That night, I slept better than I had since my firing. Not because I knew what would happen, but because I'd done something. And stood up. I'd spoken truth to power. Whatever happened next, at least I hadn't stayed silent. 3 weeks passed with no response. Nothing. Radio silence from Brightwell's board. Meanwhile, Martin's career seemed to be thriving. He posted on LinkedIn about exciting restructuring initiatives and growth opportunities. Then, 2 weeks later, another post celebrating his promotion to Vice President of Operations. My old position plus more responsibility. I stared at his smiling face on my screen, posing in front of the Brightwell logo, and felt hopelessness creeping in. Maybe my letter had been ignored. Maybe the board was protecting him. Maybe I destroyed my career for nothing. I closed LinkedIn and tried to focus on job searching, though every application felt pointless now. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, my phone rang from an unknown number. "Is this Clara Whitfield?" A professional female voice asked. "Yes. My name is Helen Torres. I'm with Brightwell's compliance department. I need to speak with you about a matter you brought to the board's attention. Can we meet?" My heart started pounding. "Yes. When?" "Today if possible. There's a coffee shop near your apartment, Brew Haven. Can you meet me there in an hour?" I agreed, hung up, and immediately started getting ready. An hour later, I sat across from Helen Torres, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an official-looking folder in front of her. "The board forwarded your letter to my department," Helen said quietly. "We've been conducting a discreet investigation. If you have more information, now's the time to share it." I pulled out my folder of documentation. "I have everything." Helen reviewed my documents methodically, making notes, asking clarifying questions. She was professional, thorough, and careful not to reveal too much about the company's internal investigation. "This is helpful," she said finally. "Can I keep copies?" "That's why I brought them," I replied. Helen leaned forward slightly. "Off the record, and I need you to understand this conversation never happened. The board is taking this very seriously. But they need more than one questionable transcript. They need a pattern." "What kind of pattern?" "Yes. Evidence that this wasn't an isolated discrepancy. That there's a history of falsification." She slid a piece of paper across the table. On it were the names of 2 companies listed on Martin's resume as former employers. "Can you verify these?" I stared at the names. "You want me to contact his previous employers?" "I'm not asking you to do anything," Helen said carefully. "I'm simply noting that these are the companies he listed. What you do with that information is your choice." She stood, gathering her folder. "Thank you for meeting with me, Ms. Whitfield. The compliance department appreciates your cooperation." After she left, I sat alone with my coffee and the paper she'd left behind. 2 company names. 2 opportunities to find more evidence. I pulled out my phone and started searching for HR contact information. The first company, Apex Consulting, had a listed HR manager. I called and asked to verify employment for Martin Keane. "I'm sorry," the HR manager said after checking, "but we have no record of anyone by that name working here." My pulse quickened. "Are you sure?" "He listed you as an employer from 2014 to 2017. "I'm certain. We keep thorough records. No Martin Keane has ever been employed by Apex Consulting." The second company, Horizon Strategic Partners, had a similar response. Not only did they have no record of Martin Keane, but the HR manager there admitted something that made my blood run cold. "We've actually had multiple calls about that name recently," she said quietly. "From other companies doing background checks. Someone's been using our company name as a fake reference." "How many calls?" "Yes. At least 3 in the past month alone. It seems whoever this person is, they're applying for multiple positions using our company as a false employer." I thanked her and hung up, my mind racing. Multiple companies were investigating Martin. I wasn't the only one who'd questioned his background. The board wasn't conducting this investigation in isolation. Other organizations were onto him too. That evening I compiled everything I'd learned into a detailed report. The fake degree, the falsified employment history, the pattern of using real company names as fake references. I sent it to Helen Torres at her official compliance department email. Her response came within an hour. "Received. Thank you." 2 words, but they felt like validation. 3 days later, something interesting happened. A new review appeared on Glassdoor about Brightwell Solutions. It was anonymous, like all Glassdoor reviews, but its content was specific and damning. "Beware of lying executives with fake credentials." Leadership here claims degrees they never earned and employment history they never had. HR either doesn't check or doesn't care. Toxic culture of dishonesty at the top. The review got traction quickly. Current and former employees started commenting, sharing their own stories of questionable management practices. The company's overall rating dropped. And I smiled because I hadn't written that review. Someone else inside the company was speaking up. The Glassdoor review went viral internally. By Monday morning, according to a contact I still had inside the company, everyone was talking about it. Speculation ran wild about who had posted it and whether it was true. Martin sent a company-wide email that afternoon. I got a screenshot from my inside contact. "Team," it began. "I'm aware of recent anonymous posts making false and defamatory claims about company leadership. These accusations are completely unfounded and constitute slander. We are taking steps to identify the source and will pursue legal action accordingly. Let me be clear. I have never misrepresented my credentials, and any suggestion otherwise is malicious and false. We will not tolerate this kind of toxicity in our workplace culture. If you have concerns, please direct them through proper channels rather than anonymous online forums. Regards, Martin Keene, VP of Operations." I read it twice, noting the defensive tone, the immediate jump to legal threats, the lack of actual denial, just claims that accusations were unfounded without offering proof. He was panicking. That same day, 3 more Glassdoor reviews appeared, all anonymous, all questioning leadership credibility. The company's rating dropped another half point. Martin's carefully constructed image was cracking, and he was helpless to stop anonymous internet reviews. My contact inside sent me another message. "Emergency leadership meeting called for tomorrow. Board members flying in. Martin's freaking out." I leaned back in my chair, feeling something that might have been satisfaction. The truth was spreading, and Martin couldn't control the narrative anymore. All I'd done was light a match. Other people were fanning the flames. According to my inside source, the emergency board meeting happened on Wednesday morning. Martin was summoned to the executive conference room at 8 a.m. sharp. The same room where he'd fired me 6 weeks earlier. He apparently came in confident, armed with printouts of the Glassdoor reviews and a prepared speech about malicious former employees. "This is Clara Whitfield's doing," he'd announced, according to my source who heard it secondhand. "She's been harassing the company since her termination. These anonymous posts are clearly her attempt at revenge for being fired for misconduct." The board chairman, an older man named Harrison Cole, whom I'd met once at a company event, listened patiently. Then he opened a folder. "Interesting theory, Mr. Keene. But we've conducted our own investigation into your background. Would you care to explain why Ashford International University has no record of your enrollment or graduation?" The room went silent. Martin's face apparently went pale. "That's impossible. There must be an error in their records. We've also contacted your listed former employers," Harrison continued calmly. "Neither Apex Consulting nor Horizon Strategic Partners have any record of your employment. In fact, they've reported receiving multiple fraudulent reference requests using their company names." Martin stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly. "This is ridiculous. You're taking the word of some disgruntled ex-employee over mine. We're taking the word of university registrars and corporate HR departments," Harrison replied, "along with the evidence of falsified transcripts and forged verification documents." Martin grabbed his briefcase. "I don't have to sit here and be accused like this. I've given this company 5 years of outstanding leadership." "Actually," Harrison said, "you do have to sit here. This is a formal disciplinary hearing. If you leave, it will be considered resignation." But Martin was already walking toward the door. He stopped at the threshold, turned back, and apparently said something about calling his lawyer before storming out. The board meeting continued without him. My phone rang at 10 p.m. that night. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Clara Whitfield," I said cautiously. "You think this will make you look good?" Martin's voice tight with rage. You think destroying my career will fix yours? I stayed silent, my hand reaching for my laptop to start a recording app. You're nothing without me, he continued. You were a mediocre manager who couldn't handle criticism. I did you a favor by firing you before you embarrassed yourself further. I hit record. Martin, why are you calling me? To tell you that whatever you think you've accomplished, it won't work. I've built relationships in this industry that you can't touch. I have friends on that board. This will blow over, and you'll still be unemployed and unhireable. That's what liars say when the truth starts to talk, I replied calmly. Then, what did you say? I said that's what liars say. People who've built their careers on fraud always think they're untouchable. Until they're not. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Martin hissed. I will make sure you never work in this industry again. I will tell every company, every recruiter, You've already done that, I interrupted. You've already tried to destroy my career. And yet here I am, still talking, still breathing, still standing. While you're the one making desperate phone calls at 10 p.m. because your life is falling apart. Silence. Heavy, angry silence. Then he hung up. I saved the recording with shaking hands. Labeled it. Backed it up to 3 different locations. Then I emailed a copy to Helen Torres with a simple message. Additional evidence of harassment. The internal audit began the following week. According to my inside source, the board hired an external auditing firm, one that specialized in corporate fraud investigations. They weren't just looking at Martin's credentials anymore. They were examining everything. Within days, the auditors uncovered a trail of falsifications that went beyond his fake degree and employment history. Martin had claimed certifications he'd never earned, listed accomplishments from projects he'd never worked on, inflated budget numbers to make his department seem more profitable than they were. He'd built his entire professional identity on lies, each one stacked carefully on top of another until the whole structure was teetering. The auditors also found financial irregularities, expense reports for conferences he'd never attended, reimbursements for business dinners that seemed suspiciously frequent and expensive. Nothing criminal, but ethically questionable and against company policy. My source sent me updates every few days. This is bigger than anyone thought. Multiple departments are involved. HR is panicking because they should have caught this during hiring. Then, 2 weeks into the audit, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, Media Inquiry. Ms. Whitfield, my name is Tyler Parks, investigative journalist with Seattle Business Journal. I'm working on a story about credential fraud in corporate leadership. Your name came up in my research. Would you be willing to speak on background about your experience at Brightwell Solutions? I stared at the email for a long time. This was it. The point where private investigation became public scandal. The moment when my personal vindication could become everyone's story. I replied carefully. I'm not available for an interview at this time. However, you might be interested in the public audit reports that will be released by Brightwell Solutions Board of Directors in the coming weeks. The audit report was released publicly 3 weeks later. Brightwell Solutions was a publicly traded company, which meant certain findings had to be disclosed to shareholders. The report didn't name Martin directly. It used phrases like a senior executive and individual under investigation, but anyone who worked there knew exactly who they were talking about. Tyler Parks, the journalist, got access to the public portions of the report and published an article the next day. The headline read, Top Executives' Credentials Under Review. Brightwell Solutions Investigates Fraud Claims. The article was carefully worded, legally protected, but damning in its implications. It detailed the discovery of falsified educational records, fake employment history, and misrepresented qualifications. It quoted the external audit firm about the systemic failure of verification procedures during the hiring process. My name wasn't mentioned, which was exactly what I wanted. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about the truth, about the system that had allowed someone like Martin to rise to the top through lies. The article was shared hundreds of times on LinkedIn. Industry groups discussed it. Other companies started quietly reviewing their own verification procedures. I received emails from 3 different recruiters who'd previously told me they couldn't work with me. All 3 apologized and asked if I was still looking for opportunities. I was still scared, still worried about my career and my future. But for the first time in months I felt heard. The truth I'd been shouting into the void was finally being recognized. And that recognition felt like the beginning of vindication. The media attention pushed Martin over the edge. According to my sources, he called an emergency staff meeting 2 days after the article published. He stood in front of the entire operations department, sweating visibly, and tried to control the narrative one last time. "The media has blown this situation completely out of proportion," he'd said, his voice tight. "These are minor discrepancies in administrative paperwork, nothing more. The audit will clear my name, and life will return to normal." Someone asked about the university's statement that he'd never attended. Martin snapped. "My degree doesn't matter. What matters is results. I've delivered results for this company for 5 years. Everything I've accomplished is real, regardless of what some bureaucrat in a registrar's office says." The room went silent. Someone in the back was recording on their phone, a violation of company policy, but nobody stopped them. "I built this department," Martin continued, his voice rising. "I turned this division into one of the most profitable in the company. And you're all going to believe some disgruntled ex-employee over me." He gestured wildly, knocking a water bottle off the podium. The recording caught everything. His red face, his shaking hands, his desperate, furious defense of lies that were already exposed. By that afternoon the clip was online. Someone had posted it to Twitter with a caption, "VP at Brightwell Solutions melts down when asked about fake degree." By evening it had 10,000 views. By the next morning 50,000. Comments poured in. "This is what happens when fraud catches up with you." The panic in his eyes is real. How did this guy stay employed this long? I watched the video 3 times, feeling no satisfaction, only sadness at how completely someone could destroy themselves. Martin had been given multiple opportunities to come clean, to resign quietly, to salvage some dignity. Instead, he doubled down on lies until they buried him completely. The board suspended Martin pending the completion of the investigation. The official memo was carefully neutral. Martin Keene has been placed on administrative leave while the company conducts a thorough review of hiring and verification procedures. This decision was made in the best interest of organizational integrity. But employees knew what it really meant. He was done. The interim director brought in to replace him was someone I recognized. Dr. Helen Moss, my old mentor from my first years at the company. She'd left Brightwell 3 years ago to take a position at another firm, but the board had convinced her to return temporarily to stabilize operations. Helen called me 2 days after her appointment. "Clara, it's Helen. Do you have time to talk?" My voice caught. "Helen, I heard you were back. The board asked me to come in as interim director. Part of my job is cleaning up the mess Martin left behind. I've seen the audit reports, the investigation findings, all of it." He paused. "I'm so sorry for what happened to you." "Thank you," I managed. "I want to make this right," Helen continued. "The board has asked me to extend an invitation. They'd like you to come in and speak with them directly. They want to apologize formally and discuss how to move forward." My heart pounded. Move forward how? They're implementing new ethics and verification procedures. They want your input on what went wrong and how to prevent it from happening again. Will you meet with them? I thought about walking back into that building, facing people who'd watched me be humiliated and said nothing. Part of me wanted to refuse, to tell them it was too late. But another part recognized the opportunity, to be heard, to help make sure this didn't happen to someone else. "When?" he asked. "Next Tuesday. 10 a.m. The board chairman will be there personally." I walked into Brightwell Solutions headquarters the following Tuesday wearing my best interview suit and carrying a folder of notes. The receptionist, the same one who'd looked away during my firing, greeted me warmly, almost apologetically. "Ms. Whitfield, they're expecting you. Conference room B." Not the same room where I'd been fired. Small mercy. The board chairman, Harrison Cole, stood when I entered, along with 2 other board members and Helen. "Ms. Whitfield, thank you for coming," Harrison said, gesturing to a chair. "We appreciate your willingness to meet with us." I sat, keeping my expression neutral. Harrison cleared his throat. "First, I want to offer a formal apology on behalf of Brightwell Solutions. You were wrongfully terminated, subjected to professional retaliation, and treated with a complete lack of dignity. The company failed you in every possible way." The words I'd waited months to hear. "Thank you," I said quietly. "We'd like to discuss how to make this right," another board member added. "Starting with financial compensation for wrongful termination and emotional distress." They slid a document across the table. The number made my eyes widen. "We're also implementing comprehensive ethics reforms," Helen explained. "Background verification protocols, whistleblower protections, mandatory reporting procedures. We'd like your input on these policies." I reviewed the settlement offer, my mind racing. This was vindication, recognition, justice. But something still felt unfinished. "What happens to Martin?" I asked. Harrison's expression hardened. "His formal hearing is next week. Public, as required by company bylaws. The outcome is essentially predetermined given the evidence. He'll be terminated for cause." I nodded slowly. "I'd like to be there." At the hearing room was smaller than I expected. A conference table, leather chairs, formal portraits on the walls. Martin sat on one side with his lawyer, looking diminished in an expensive suit that somehow looked wrong on him now. The board members sat opposite, with Helen present as interim director. I sat in the back as an observer, officially invited by the board. Martin's eyes found mine when I walked in. His expression was pure hatred. The hearing began with the chairman reading the charges formally. "Martin Keene, you are here to answer allegations of credential fraud, falsification of employment records, and misrepresentation of professional qualifications. How do you plead?" "Not guilty," Martin said, his voice steady. "These charges are based on misunderstandings and clerical errors." For the next hour, the board presented evidence. The fake transcripts, the statements from universities and former employers, the audit findings, the pattern of lies spanning 5 years. Martin's lawyer tried to argue technicalities, that some documents might have been lost over time, that university records could be incomplete, that my allegations were motivated by revenge. Then Harrison played the recorded phone call. My voice calm and steady. Martin's voice, threatening and desperate. "You're nothing without me. I will make sure you never work in this industry again." The lawyer stopped mid-argument. Martin's face drained of color. "This recording, provided by Ms. Whitfield, demonstrates continuing harassment and retaliation against a whistleblower," Harrison said. "Combined with the evidence of credential fraud, it paints a clear picture of an individual willing to lie, threaten, and manipulate to protect a fraudulent career." The board voted unanimously for termination. Martin didn't even react. Just sat there, staring at the table, while his entire fabricated life collapsed around him. As he was escorted out by security, the same guard who'd walked me out months ago, I felt no triumph. Just a quiet exhale of relief. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just exhales. The news of Martin's termination spread through the industry within hours. The official press release was carefully worded, but word of mouth filled in the details. By evening, his LinkedIn profile was gone. By the next day, several industry groups had quietly removed him from member lists. His reputation collapsed overnight. Former colleagues posted vague comments about integrity matters and truth in leadership. Companies he'd applied to for future positions quietly withdrew their interest. The scandal was complete. I didn't celebrate. Didn't post anything on social media or make triumphant calls to friends. I just sat in my apartment that evening, looking at the settlement offer from Brightwell, and let myself finally feel the weight of everything that had happened. Martin had tried to destroy me, had actually succeeded in damaging my career and reputation significantly. But I'd survived. More than survived. I'd fought back with truth and persistence and documentation. And truth, it turned out, was stronger than lies. Even when lies had power and position behind them. The next day, I received an official settlement package from Brightwell Solutions. Financial compensation for wrongful termination. A formal letter of apology that I could show to potential employers. Clearing of my personnel record, with the misconduct flag removed. And an offer. Would I consider returning to the company in an ethics and compliance advisory role? I read the offer carefully. It was generous, meaningful work, good pay. A chance to help prevent what happened to me from happening to others. But something felt wrong about going back. About trying to fix what they'd ignored. I replied to the board's offer 3 days later, after careful consideration. Dear Mr. Cole and board members, thank you for your generous offer and formal apology. I appreciate the recognition and the financial settlement, which I accept. However, I must respectfully decline the position with Brightwell Solutions. I'm not coming back to fix what you ignored. The signs of Martin's fraud were always there. The unsigned verification forms. The discrepancies in records. The pattern of behavior. People chose not to look, chose not to question, chose comfort over truth. I can't return to an environment that needed someone's career to be destroyed before it took integrity seriously. Instead, I'm starting my own consultancy focused on employment ethics and credential verification. I hope to help other organizations avoid the mistakes that were made here. Thank you again for the opportunity. Sincerely, Clara Whitfield. I hit send and closed my laptop, feeling the finality of that decision settle over me. That afternoon, I registered a business name, Whitfield Ethics and Compliance Consulting. Filed the LLC paperwork. Created a simple website outlining my services. By the end of the week, I had my first inquiry. From a tech startup looking to implement proper verification procedures for new hires. Then another from a mid-sized firm that wanted an audit of their existing hiring practices. My third client was particularly satisfying. A company looking to replace an executive who'd just been discovered with falsified credentials. They wanted to make sure it never happened again. Word spread through professional networks. The woman who'd exposed Martin Keene was now available to help other companies avoid similar scandals. Within a month, I had 6 clients. Within 2 months, 12. I wasn't getting rich, but I was making enough to live on. More importantly, I was doing work that mattered. Work that protected people like me from people like Martin. My old mentor Helen emailed me 2 months after I declined the board's offer. Clara, I have something I thought you should see. Martin applied for a position using a different name. The company sent me the resume for verification since he listed Brightwell as a previous employer. Thought you'd want to know he's trying to rebrand. She attached the resume. The name was different. Martin R. Kent instead of Martin Keene. But the qualifications were the same, including the fake degree from Ashford International University. He was trying again. Trying to restart his career of fraud under a different name. I forwarded Helen's email to Tyler Parks, the journalist who'd covered the original story. His response came within an hour. This is incredible. Can I run with this? Yes, I replied. With one condition. Forward the resume to every company he's applied to. Let them know what they're dealing with. Tyler agreed. 3 days later, his article appeared. Disgraced executive attempts career reboot under alias. Multiple companies report applications from Martin Keene using altered name. The article was thorough and damning. It included side-by-side comparisons of the resumes, quotes from companies that had received applications from Martin Kent, and expert commentary on the prevalence of resume fraud. It also mentioned my consulting firm as a resource for companies looking to strengthen their verification procedures. The publicity brought more clients. But more importantly, it made Martin unemployable. Every company he applied to would now find those articles with a simple Google search. His attempt to reinvent himself was dead before it started. I felt no rage, no gloating. Just quiet closure. Martin had built his career on lies, and those lies had finally, permanently, caught up with him. There would be no more second chances, no more opportunities to deceive. Meanwhile, my business continued growing. I hired an assistant to help with scheduling and administrative work. Started developing training materials for corporate HR departments. Was invited to speak at a professional ethics conference. 6 months after my firing, I was building something real. Something honest. Something that helped people instead of hurting them. And that felt better than any revenge ever could. A year after walking out of Brightwell Solutions with my belongings in a cardboard box, I received an unexpected email. It was from the same anonymous LinkedIn profile that had first told me about Martin's fraud. The message was simple. Thank you for not staying silent. You saved more people than you know. I finally had the courage to report issues in my own department because of your example. Sometimes the system works, but only if someone is brave enough to make it work. Katie. I replied. Thank you for reaching out to me when I needed it most. That information changed everything. I hope you're in a better situation now. The response came quickly. I am. I left Brightwell last month for a company with actual ethics. Your consulting firm's website helped me know what questions to ask during interviews. Keep doing what you're doing. I saved that exchange. Printed it out and put it in a frame on my office wall. Because that was the real victory. Not destroying Martin but helping create change that protected other people. My consulting business had taken on its first major corporate client, Brightwell Solutions. They wanted a comprehensive ethics overhaul, and Helen had recommended me for the contract. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I walked into that building for the first time as a consultant, not an employee. Security greeted me professionally. Former colleagues smiled and waved, no longer afraid to acknowledge me. The conference room where I'd been fired had been renamed. It was now the Transparency Room, according to the plaque outside. Small changes but meaningful ones. I spent 3 months working with their HR and compliance departments, developing verification protocols, training staff, creating whistleblower protection policies. Making sure what happened to me couldn't happen to anyone else. On my last day of the contract, Amanda from accounting finally approached me. Clara, I owe you an apology. I should have stood up for you. I was scared of losing my job, but that's no excuse. I looked at her. This woman I'd considered a friend who'd turned away when I needed her most. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It means something even now. She nodded, tears in her eyes. What you did was brave. I hope I can be that brave someday. You can, I assured her. You just have to decide that truth matters more than comfort. I'm sitting in my office now, 1 year and 3 months after my firing, looking at a new client contract. My consulting firm has grown to include 2 employees and a waiting list of organizations wanting ethics audits. The business is profitable, meaningful, and built entirely on a foundation of truth. My phone buzzes with a notification. Another LinkedIn message, this one from a woman I don't know. I just read about what happened to you and how you fought back. I'm dealing with something similar at my company. A manager who's lied about his qualifications. I'm scared to report it. Do you have any advice? I write back immediately. Document everything. Get official verification from universities and former employers. Report through proper channels, and if those fail, go higher. Truth takes longer than lies, but it lasts longer too. And remember, you're not destroying someone's career. They did that themselves the moment they chose to lie. I think about Martin sometimes. Wonder where he is, what he's doing. If he's found work somewhere far enough away that his reputation doesn't follow. If he's changed his name completely this time. If he's learned anything from losing everything. But mostly, I think about the lesson his lies taught me. That liars rise fast because truth takes the stairs. But truth never stops climbing. And eventually, inevitably, Truth reaches the top while lies collapse under their own weight. I lost my job, my peace, my reputation, and I got them all back by refusing to play dirty, by documenting instead of destroying, by speaking truth instead of spreading rumors, by building something honest instead of tearing down with dishonesty. Integrity isn't weakness, I learned. It's the long game. It's the choice to do what's right even when it's hard, even when it costs you, even when nobody's watching. Because eventually someone is watching. Eventually, truth finds the light. My laptop pings with another email. This one from a Fortune 500 company looking for comprehensive ethics training for their leadership team. I smile, open the message, and start drafting a proposal. This is my life now. Not revenge, but purpose. Not destruction, but construction. Not silencing liars, but empowering truth-tellers. Martin wanted to erase me from professional existence. Instead, he inadvertently launched me into a career that matters more than anything I did before. I close my laptop, sign the new client contract, and look at the wall where I've hung that first anonymous message. Thank you for not staying silent. I whisper to the empty office, testing the words I've finally come to believe. He taught me that the truth is worth fighting for, even when fighting costs everything. Especially then. And I smile because I know that somewhere, someone else is discovering their own fraud, questioning their own corrupt system, wondering if speaking up is worth the risk. And maybe, just maybe, my story will give them the courage to answer yes.